Welcome back, McFly subscribers. This is what we're tying today. It's called a Chubby Chernobyl. Kind of a weird name. It's based off the Chernobyl ant, and it's a really high visibility fly that just works. I mean, it sits really well on top of the water. It's probably one of the better patterns to fish a hopper-dropper style kind of fishing. It's really buoyant with this big tuft. It's really easy to see. I mean, you're never going to miss this one on top of the water. So it kind of acts like almost like a indicator with a hook on it. So let's get to tying this. All right, so we're going to want to place the hook securely in our vise. And for thread today, I'm using Vivis 10-aught in black. The reason why I'm using 10-aught is because it's a flat thread. You don't want to be using a round thread or that can cut the foam. So start it. It doesn't have to be right at the hook eye. It can be. It's up to you. And we're going to come all the way down, build a thread base. It doesn't have to be a perfect thread base. You can see I've kind of got open spiral wraps in a way. We're going to come down to the base here, and then we're just going to work our way back up. So we're just making a spot for the material to be able to rest properly. Next, we need some crystal flash fibers. And I got about 5 or 6 strands here. I'm going to capture it at the top, bring it back so it doesn't go in front of the hook eye. And we'll tie this on right on top of the hook shank, all the way down. We're going to go a little bit into the bend so it kind of angles downward a little bit. That might be too much. There we go. And just to kind of get this out of the way, we'll cut that off. Oh, and by the way, the hooks I'm using today are Risen's Streamer 300 in size 8. Now, you might be asking, why streamer hook? Well, I kind of like the heavier weighted hook because that's going to help keep it from landing upside down or sideways. That weight is going to help keep it down. Also, I'm fishing these for bass. And bass pull hard, so it's kind of nice to have a little heavier shanked hook so I can give some nice pull to the bass without bending or fear of bending the hook. I've got this UV, and the color I'm using, use anything you want, but this is a copper olive. By the way, for the crystal flash, you could use any color as well. All right, so we're going to grab a little bit, fair amount, actually a little bit more of this dubbing, and we're going to dub this on. I'm going to create a little thread bump here. And work our way up just slightly. We'll come back to right at the start of that little, I guess, crystal flash tail. Next, I got a strip of foam, which I cut about the width of the hook gap. And then I just cut off a little tapered end to it. Could use a Chernobyl cutter. So I've got like something like this. I just don't have one big enough for it, but you can see how the end there is tapered and then it's open to the top. You could use that, but this works just fine. Okay, and we want a fairly long tail on these. But first, before we tie that in, we're going to want to put a nice dab of super glue there. That's going to ensure that this does not spin on us. And you can see I've got maybe a half a hook shank length tail going on. We're going to tie that in directly on top. All right, 4 or 5 wraps is good. We're going to bring this up one turn like so, and we're going to pull this down and we're going to wrap over it like so. So we're actually going to create a little space. Just like so. All right. Let's clean all this up. Kind of compress that foam right there. Next, I got this poly yarn. There's a bunch of different things you can get. This one's on a card, which makes it a little tricky. I'm going to show you a trick on it. But when you get on a card, you can see it puts bends in the material. So we're going to tie it in right at the bend. And we want to make sure that, see if we pull it up, then you can see now it's got a bend there. If we pull it back here, you can see it's bending forward. So So we just want to make sure we're tying in directly at that bend. We're going to tie back to the base. We'll tie up a little bit, and we can bring this back and then tie over it like so. And now that's angled rearward. I'm going to give it quite a few wraps just to really lock it in. And by the way, this is a 3mm foam, not 2mm. So you could use a 2mm if you're using a smaller hook. This being a size 8, I want a little more buoyancy, so I'm using 3mm. And this is gold. You could tie it in any color you want. Next, I've got the centipede legs in speckled tan. You could use any round type leg. Make sure they're round. They're really nice looking. I like the kind of speckledness. I think it really adds to this fly. Now we're going to use one. We're going to fold it over like so. And usually I would just tie this in on top and then bring it down. Cut the tip off and bring it down. That's how I usually do it. But in this fly, I find it's beneficial to tie individual strands on each side. So I just cut it in half. Excuse my rooster in the background. I don't know if you can hear it. So now we're just going to tie this in on the side like so. And that's really close to the foam right there, and that's going to make it kind of bend out a little bit. So there we go. So now we made this less. So if you tie it really close to the foam, it's going to bend inward like this. We want to kind of splay them out. The next piece right in the center on the other side. Do the same thing. Like so. Now we need more of that same dubbing. I'm going to dub a noodle onto our thread. We're going to cover up all these thread wraps. Make sure your legs are positioned how you want them. All right, there we go. So we covered all that up. Let's pull everything back, make a wrap in front. Let's get more of that, but this time quite a bit. So we're gonna cover up this whole hook shank in this dubbing. So I end with my thread about a hook eye length back from the eye of the hook. Take a little bit more super glue, put a little dot there, pull this forward, wrap it over the hook. And by the way, when you're tying on foam, you want to kind of angle it towards you a little bit because that thread is going to twist it once you wrap on, like so. Now we're going to wrap up a wrap or two. We're going to pull this down and we're going to wrap over it again to create a little space just like we did before. And we're going to basically do the same thing. So another cut of this polypro. Tie it right at that bend part. Make sure it's not angled weird. Another set of silly legs. I guess these are the rubber legs, not silly legs. A little bit more of that dubbing. And we pull everything upward, make a wrap in front, maybe two, right where the eye is. Okay, and I'm going to turn this so you can see it. I'm going to go ahead and get my whip finisher. I've got this little place to rest my thread here, so I've got two hands and I can come in, hold everything rearward, and really give it a good whip finish. So that thread snapped off, which means that that's not going to be the strongest whip finish, but we're going to fix that in a second. By the way, the scissors I've got today are these Risen mitten scissors. They work great. Now for cutting the long strips of foam, you want something longer. This is not long enough, But for getting in tight and doing fine work, I really like these mitten scissors by Risen. So now we're going to come in for the head, and we are going to cut this off square, like so. And then we're going to just knock off the corners to make it a little more rounded. Now we do need some hair scissors, like I've got here. We're just going to pull these wings back. I'm going to come in at an angle so the tips are almost touching the tail, and then give that a cut like so. Now that doesn't look that great, but we've got to brush this out. So once we brush this out, it should look a little better. Can flatten this with our thumb. That'll help. And there we go. That's what we're looking for. To secure everything, I've got this is Solarez Ultra Thin, okay, or bone dry, and it comes with a little handy paintbrush. So what I'm going to do is, just to make everything durable, I kind of want that to lay down a little more. I'm going to go ahead and I want this separated out a little bit too. Lay that down, so you paint it on, hit it with your UV light, and that's going to force those fibers rearward a little bit more and make that a little better. And the more you fish this, the more this fans out. You could brush it more if you want. You could take a bodkin and tease that more, however you want to do it. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with that UV resin, and I'm going to hit that whip finish, especially since I didn't tie it perfectly. It broke. All right, there we go. So you might look at this and you might say, hey, you know what? I don't like the way that these rubber legs are sitting. I want these to be more forward or whatever. So there's a little trick. You can take that UV resin, okay, and just paint right at the base. Take your UV light. Now don't want to pull hard because that's going to cure it and it's going to be funky. So you just want to lightly angle it to where you want it and zap it with the light. It's not going to do a lot, but you can see it's definitely a little more forward. So if you want to do that, you definitely could. This is not necessary, but it's, it's definitely going to help make those legs positioned exactly where you want them. You can see now they're a little more forward. You can do that for each one if you want. I'm happy with the positioning here. So last but not least, you got to cut these to length. You don't have to if you're happy with the length, but I want these slightly shorter. So we're going to knock off the tips. There we go. And there is the Chubby Chernobyl. Like I said, it's a really good fly for kind of using as an indicator. Dropping a nymph underneath. It floats so well you could probably fish a streamer underneath, whatever you want to do. It's a really high floating. This is so visible in the water. I mean, you're never going to not see that. So if you're fishing a not well lit time frame, so like early in the morning, late in the evening, it's really beneficial there as well. One last thing I want to mention, you could keep this little tail thing long. I like to cut it right about the length of the tail, so keep everything even, but you could keep that longer if you want. If you guys haven't already, definitely check out my sponsor, Risen Fly. They made those scissors that I was using. They also made the hook I was using, and they make some really great quality fly rods and reels and fly line, just basically anything you need to start fly fishing. And their prices are absolutely amazing for the quality gear that they sell. I mean, everything is really high quality, but they're affordable, very, very affordable. So best off, they're offering you all a discount. So go to www.risenfly.com and type in McFly at checkout, and you'll get 15% off of your first order with them. It's just something I really wanted to do for you guys. So when I started with them for sponsorship, I said, hey, can you get my subscribers a discount somehow? And they said, yeah, so definitely check that out. If you guys like this kind of content, please subscribe and hit that bell notification for future video updates. Also, if you could hit the like button, it would really help me and the channel out. I will see you on the next video. Now you go catch some fish.